changed it during the first season. Now it's interesting because first season exists on stream services, but I don't necessarily like the stream services. So from this point on, we're going to be YouTube focused. And with that said, let me get into the episode 1. So I don't necessarily have a topic for this episode. It's more of an introductory episode because I'm not expecting anybody to have listened to season 1. It's only 10 episodes in that, and it was recorded probably about a year and a half ago. And so this episode is going to kind of explain why I have such a hard time with this. Most of season 1 was like me grinning and bearing it and kind of going through it because a bunch of people suggested that I do it. And I did. I just grabbed a bunch of stuff that I had and transitioned to go somewhere else and used it for this show. Okay. People seem to listen to my bullshit. I don't know why. It seemed to get worse as I get older. And I wasn't sure if the process of doing this is something that I could do. I don't see myself in this role. Okay, I'm not saying I don't have. I recognize that to certain people I'm kind of important as a person in their lives. But I don't ever necessarily see myself as being important enough to give advice to a mass amount of people. Or to discuss shit or my weird takes on stuff. I know I have a lot of working knowledge about shit. I know I've forecasted stuff that's actually happened. And that's all fucking me turning around and saying to you, oh, look, I've done this and I've done that. But I guess I have to do this. See, I looked at the idea of like how YouTube operates. Like they have influencers, people that kind of, I don't see myself as that person. And you're like, well, everybody's designed to market stuff. Do commercials and, no. I don't necessarily see me saying to you, go do this. I'm more or less the guy that says, check this out, right? And if you get it for free or get access to it and, by any means necessary, really, then cool. If you're interested in it, go for it. Not that big of a deal. It's not like a demand thing. I'm not here to endorse anybody in that aspect. So in season 1, I literally get behind this microphone and screamed into my computer more or less because I didn't see myself as the person to present all this shit. I still don't. This has taken me several months to kind of not necessarily wake up to gather up the courage. It's not the courage. It's the notion that some people want to hear this. Individually, I do great. And what's weird is if you put me in front of a room full of people, and it's a topic I have passion about, like I've done teaching and all that stuff, I can do. That's not that big of a deal. I don't have that block. But broadcasting into nothingness is a fucking nightmare. Like, there's no gauging. There's no me sitting down and kind of reading the situation going, okay, I should shut the fuck up now. There's no me trying to figure out, well, maybe I should liven things up, and maybe I should continue. People seem to be interested in what I'm saying. That's not the situation. It's just void. This weird void. I hear my voice back. Now, I did radio for several years back in the day. I didn't mind doing that either. It really is just the idea of recording and trying not to seem insane. And I don't know. I just don't have a high level of self-importance. I don't think that these episodes really need to be done. There's a lot of people. I mean, I'm thinking well over 30 now that think this should be done. So, this is why I'm doing season 2. The format will be simple. I'm just recording myself. And I will be basically presenting topics that interest me. Now, season 1, I did get feedback from. A lot of people were expecting me to continue. And I said, I didn't really want to do that. I just did 10 episodes just to kind of see how they went. And there was responses, there was thoughts, and it was people I knew. Um, in general, and maybe this is anti-YouTube, but I'm really not gonna look at comments. Don't really care. Uh, it's kind of a forward thing, and a lot of it is because I'm not gonna get bitter at people I don't fucking know. Everybody's entitled to opinions. You know, what is the saying? You know, opinions like assholes. Everybody has one, and it is what it is. I'm gonna present the information as I see it. I'm gonna do some research of some of this stuff. A lot of it is just takes, and you really can't change takes. Um, like with film, which I'm gonna tell you right now. There's another possible podcast coming down the pipeline. Actually, there's probably two, and it sucks. Like, okay, so the second one is probably going to be a group, and I will get more into that when it's a possibility. I'm not expecting it to be a possibility. The one after this is going to be an extension of one I did for YouTube a while back, and it was for a class. It was a lot of fucking work. And that one might be a lot more YouTube ish, meaning that you're not listening to a man just speaking at you. It will probably have shit, you know, animation, random editing stuff put to test. That will be more about my in my field of knowledge, like film. I'm gonna discuss film on this. I'm gonna discuss random stuff. This is designed to be social commentary and pop culture, like the arts, because I think the arts kind of defined us as humans. I think our interpretations of them, our generation of them, really kind of define us. Like that's the end all of end all, including like work. Like there's a lot of things that I'm gonna touch on at some point. Um, the plan is to actually have um, 2 episodes a month. I'm actually gonna do it like old school fucking television to a certain degree, like maybe 24 episodes a season. I know this is like a jump. Like you're like, bastard, you just told us you had a hard time with 10. Again, I've been talking to a lot of fucking people about this, like critically about this, like older people, people that know me for a long time. And it's good doing that it, because you're telling them to be honest. Like, how do you interpret me? Because I don't see this. I know I can do this, but if given me the option, okay, I'm kind of like caught between like Albert Brooks's character in broadcast news and Mark Hunter from Pump of the Volume. Like, I don't see myself necessarily like, oh, I'm not the person. Mark, you had parents that give a shit about you. You have working knowledge. You're going above and beyond. Like in that movie, it doesn't make sense. I don't come from parents that support. I don't come from. I'm Generation X, so I'm sideways in so many fucking things. So I'll get into that periodically. But kids raising kids and random junk is what I was raised in. So the value I put to myself wasn't necessarily high. However, over the years, me helping people out and me engaging situations made me realize, okay, well, I can kind of manage this. This is not that big of a deal. And it's one of those things like you don't necessarily go to a job interview and say, hey, I can do all these amazing things. I don't think about them. So having people give you feedback about them does kind of help. Actually, I advise it to anybody because this is what got me back onto this microphone, and this is what motivated me to start writing the current, I guess, novella. It looks like a novella that I'm writing, which is more philosophical than anything. And a lot of it is because I've been thrown into so many fucked up situations. I mean, life handed me like junkies dens and fucking just adults failing across the board growing up. Um, a lot of crisis, like attempted suicides and all that shit. And somehow I've been able to kind of maneuver through a lot of that and help people maneuver through a lot of that. Now, I'm not a therapist at all. Fucking not even close to it. But I do respect how much people endure. Because that, to me, kind of makes humans really fucking amazing. Especially if they're able to process it. Especially if they're able to process it and it become art. Or just a philosophical measure of their being. Like, that's so ridiculously important. Because, okay, so some people become artists. Like, they don't necessarily view themselves as that, though. Because the institutions exist, and you think, okay, this is formal training to become an artist, right? I have some of that, but not a lot. So you go to these institutions, you read these books, you kind of get the feeling. That's how formal education is. Now, what's weird about formal education is there was a person before the school. There was people before the school. And they did the work prior to the school existing. Thus, how the knowledge base is generated. It's like history and oral history and like accountability and all this stuff is a construct. The formality of it, I should say. The experimentation is interesting. That's what makes human beings so fucking amazing, right? Across the board, no matter how horrifying of shit they're doing, or how amazing and beneficial for the rest of the race, human race, it's doing, right? The idea that they're able to conceptualize things and make them something. To me, that's amazing. Like the idea that nothing exists. There's no critical thinking. In, I would say, in my opinion, most animals, I could be wrong. I'm going to say that. I could be wrong. There's a lot of stuff I will be fucking bold about that. I'll just be honest. I'm not going to automatically assume. But the probability is pretty high. That's what gave human beings an advantage. Our ability to abstract is what gives us understanding. Now, the flip side of that is the critical thinking piece. It's you deconstructing that abstraction, you interpreting it, and that's what human beings are. Like we do that. Again, like the one thing I have a bullet note here. I have flashcards because I have to keep myself on topic. I will rant like a motherfucker, right? And the idea is for me to forget that I'm ranting into a void. So I'm trying to do my best to trick that. I'm not sure if I'm doing a good job at it, but you tell me eventually. You're like, but you don't read the messages. Yeah, I'm not going to. People will though. They will. They'll tell me. There's probably over 30 people, at least in this world, that will listen to this shit. So the idea of being an influencer or covert salesman, I'm not selling you shit to make profit. Okay? There will be a t shirt or prints, I should say, that I'm going to sell. And a lot of it is because, well, if this takes up more full time, like if you wanted me to go from 24 episodes to like 1,000 or something like that, then I have to figure out how to offset my cost ratio for my life to be able to do that. And maybe even get better at this. I also know it's the best measurement to see if you're doing all right. And it's not a, see, the idea of voting with your dollar is interesting because if you want something to exist, you got to kind of put money towards it. We live in a capitalist society. That's exactly how it is. Don't get it fucked up. So I'm not going to sell you shit and influence you to buy something. If you get this shit for free, by any means necessary, get it. I will say that again. I'm not gonna talk to random companies, and unless I'm using the thing, which most of the stuff I'll be talking about, I've engaged in probably multiple times. Then it makes sense. It lines up. I think this is a good thing. However, I'm not gonna go, well, buy this elixir or look at this thing, and no, I don't. But if I'm not really genuinely into this thing, not gonna happen. So by design, I'm here to talk about pop culture, art, and social structures. That's what this whole fistful of fuckery is about. Okay. And I'll go off a tangents, like the idea of like human beings creating shit. That is fucking interesting. The fact we have schools and disciplines and books and working knowledge about shit based on experimentation and engagement and feeling. That's fucking amazing. Like, you gotta step back for a second and think about the idea of how all this is created. Now, if you grew up in a city or a community that just wants you to be a worker and you're really not told to think about this stuff, yeah, that's also a thing too. I grew up in one of those societies. So I became a weirdo immediately. And when you're younger, you're like, motherfucker, don't call me a weirdo. And it's funny because after a while, it doesn't phase you as much. Because you hear it so much, it becomes redundant, almost cliche. And when you start realizing people don't, at least as an adult, that they don't have their shit together. Like, at all. Like, there's so many people that back in the day, they screamed, like, how great they were, and you watch them just become fucking messes. Like, god damn it, dude. I don't know. So the weirdo moniker or like all that shit doesn't fucking phase you. I realize that the engaging stuff that humans created is interesting. The idea of talking into nothingness. Now, that pause right there would have been something, like a Flavor Flav type person or another person segmenting another piece of conversation in their perspective on it would have been a thing. But we don't necessarily have that. So the idea, I just sit here and there's a thing in front of me that's just like fucking void, is bothersome. Now, you hear me flipping over cards. I'm not shitting you. I literally have fucking cue cards to kind of keep me on topic. All right. I already covered that. The problem with broadcasting and presenting myself in this way. If this is working out for you, so be it. And if you like to print a dope ass fucking shirt that comes out, buy it. If you don't want to buy it, don't fucking buy it. I don't give a fuck. But if you buy it, it's a measurement. I at least know what the fuck I stand at. Okay? They're gonna be rare in print run. I'm gonna get on that. And you're like, well, wow, aren't you thinking rare? Like you're saying this to me, and I'm telling you, okay, I collect stuff. Okay, by proxy, I read comics, so I collect comics. I've done that. Like, I understand the idea of marketing. Don't get it fucked up. I do have a working education in communication, right? And that's why you think, like, why the fuck would you have a problem with this? I still fucking do. It's. I'm telling you, it's more of a point of view on how I see myself, and I'm really doing my fucking best looking at random posters right now to not think about what I'm doing. Um, so the print idea is just want to do these prints. I don't want the same fucking cliche shit over and over and over again. It's going to be a variation of the same of the logo, but the color and scheme and all that stuff, like clearly, like if you get 25 of them out and you sell 25 of them and you change everything up afterwards, then what happens is that you might get a similar image, but you're not getting the same image. So if I see one of the 25, I'm going to know, oh, this point in time, that person bought this, so on and so forth. That's the mechanics of it. That, and over time, it's better to mix shit up than having the same fucking mass-produced fucking, I did 1,000, 10,000, 100,000 of these for you to buy. No. And what's funny about it is buying it is separate from any algorithm, any advertisement, anything. It just exists. That's why I'm like, if the only way to truly measure how this is going is that you vote with your dollar. I'll get more back into that in like one of the future episodes. I'm gonna give other examples of that. Okay, so I'm gonna get into this, and you can have a judgment of it, because obviously I'm broadcasting it, and my ass is deciding to put it publicly. But I'm gonna say this because it just kind of makes sense. Okay, so how I was raised was lacking support. Neglect was really big. Physical abuse was really big. Just feeling like an object and then having an effect. Most of my life, things were a duality. And that wasn't because I wanted it to be, it just happened to be. And that duality actually showed up in school. So my school life and my street life were not the same. You know, street life meaning that it was life outside of the home. And then there was the duality in households and, you know, appeasing to this, appeasing to that, dysfunctional adults not really doing the couple thing and kind of having their own agenda, which is substance abuse, you know. Not realizing from my perspective at the time that this was the thing. Meaning that when I was growing up, and this is how most people are, to understand this, there's probably a fucking word for it. I'm not a psych major, wasn't a psych major, so, and even college, like that's a fucking funny thing, right? So, there's probably a term for it. Guaranteed there's a term. There's probably several terms, and each school of thought has their own term, and that's where, you know, the fucking confusion comes in. So I'm going to describe it, and you apply the term if you know the fucking term. So when you're growing up, you kind of see the world around you. You eventually realize there's multiple layers of the world. There's the outside world, the pop world. Like you become aware of, like, I guess the zeitgeist. I guess some level of like multiple sections of the populace. Like it's you, then the household, then the street, the neighborhood, so on and so forth. Right. So when you start seeing things where I grew up being fucked up and everything fucked up, it's really you choosing your own abuse. You're like you see, okay, this person is getting hit with a fucking shovel. Just because he said he just sighed. Okay, so you know what? My situation is not as bad as that. I'm just gonna deal with my situation. And you're like, but there's departments of that help kids out. No, they make things worse. Because they try to do better, but they don't know really how to measure that. That's complicated, but that simplifies it. So you have your perspective, and for the longest time, when you're around other kids and you're talking to them, you think that they share a similar perspective, and that's where I went wrong because I didn't have an authority figure or a person saying, "Hey, you kind of like take me aside and actually really kind of explain how I'm viewing the world differently from the person on the side of me." All I know is that crisis is a thing, and when I still end up in one of the fields I currently work in, like that, the volume of crisis is kind of toned down because I'm so used to like shit going sideways all the fucking time. Right? So the conflict I have in myself is even though I constructed this thing, right? This person, this perspective, I put together the recipe of myself, right? I don't see myself in the same light that other people see me. And that's a disconnect. And that's probably a psychological thing. Pretty sure it is. Because nothing kind of made me aware of it. And it's not like, well, you got to humble yourself. It's not that. I know my role, and I got really good at knowing my role. And I don't necessarily begrudge that. But there's enough people right now that say to me, hey, you really need to kind of start, because seems to be lost, right? Like, don't get me wrong. There is people that do the Gen X thing. And I understand it. Some of it I agree with. Like, most of it I do. But then I also know the working explanations for a lot of it. They present some of these ideas. And again, it's no disrespect to them. Like, how they do their thing makes sense to me. My shit exists more in the reality and problems of things. Like, when I said earlier, kids raising kids is a thing. The operating system for the previous generation, for the boomer generation, is just kids should be seen, not heard. And that kind of negates any structure of the kids. Like, okay, now I'm just a fucking tadaksh, or like fucking a knickknack or a piece of furniture. And that's kind of how it is, especially from the men's perspective, right? So this is the conflict. You can probably agree. Actually, I expect there's enough people listening to this. If you're actually listening to this and you've gotten this fucking far, can kind of understand this perspective, right? And I'm not sure if it's designed to kind of keep you at bay, right? Not to overflate your self-importance, right? 'Cause I don't think you should. I think sometimes you have to tend to your own bullshit. Like, you really have to kind of go, it's me fucking up. And the ones that are honest do that. The ones that don't end up like fucking crazy. Like, usually have pickup trucks. Like, they just end up fucking weird and like, I am the conqueror of the world. No, dude, you're trying to be like a member of Mad Max world. Like, I don't know what the fuck's going on with it. And that's just the women. Right? Anyway, I don't necessarily look at myself as being like a standard leader in that aspect. Because the way I look at the world and the way things kind of became is there's two leadership roles, or three actually. The fake it to make it ones, which depending on their personality and depending on where they come from, can how authentic they are, as at least trying to be in everyday life. Um, it's like the mediocre road. like the ones that don't really know how to do the leadership thing, but yet you have enough faith in them to probably think they're probably going to be a good leader, give it enough time, you kind of give them a pass. The fake it to make it concept. And that's a thing across the fucking board in every fucking discipline, period. Right? And a lot of it is based on character and merit and what they bring to the table. We kind of forgive them to a certain degree, right? Because that's how it is. The ones that drive everybody insane are the idea of the scum rising to the top. These are the fucking ass kissers. These are the people that you know their entire life they were horrible fucking human beings. Because maybe mom gave them too many cookies. I don't fucking know. I just know they exist and they're really fucking vain and like will do anything to kind of just exist and become leaders of other people. You see this a lot, probably more than you want to. And these people like the fact of having power differential, like the ability to control your lives and want to constantly use scare tactics against you or like power grabbing, right? And some of these people get their jobs because they just exist. Enough people left a company or left a institution or left a group because it was just toxic. They just recognized it as being that. And that's one thing I like about the modern world, like the idea of toxic relationships and them actually naming toxic, which is seems to be like a no-brainer name, but to have that in our pop culture is fucking genius. Because it's what it is. It's poisoning you and you don't realize it's fucking poisoning you. You know, you subject yourself to these things, and when all the creative venture, the things that make you like love life, kind of get slowly squeezed out by this fucking gas, right? So when you work at a company, right? I've had several fucking jobs. When you work at a company, it's usually the person that the handful of people. It's usually not just one person that gets in the position and they undermine everything to kind of like make it suck so bad and not make the job fluid at all. And they're either a stickler for these weird ass fucking rules or create situations that probably jeopardize your career because they just don't know how to fucking manage their own shit. And there's a turnover. Turnovers are fucking devastating, right? Like, the one thing about the Project 2025 that drove me fucking nuts is that they want to turn over the whole federal piece. Have you worked at a company that switches over a large amount of people in a short period of time? That shit's a fucking nightmare. Because nobody knows what the fuck they're doing. And then the toxic person just sits there. They become like some weird by proxy fucking line leader. Like they become like, oh, I know what's going on. And they fucking don't. They're there. And they just occupy space. And the only reason why they get promoted is because they're there. Right? There's that version. And then there's just the people that undermine other people to, like, the fact of selfishness. Like everything's some weird, like, fake fucking, because social Darwinism is fucking fake. Like, fake structure, right? And they, like, everything's a game. This is militant. You don't understand. No, dude, check yourself. Like, you know, male, female, fucking whatever. They exist. Like, my wife, female friends of mine, like, they run into this. I've run into this. Dudes have run into this. And usually what happens is the dudes are like, well, like, fuck this. You know, they'll immediately, like, call them on their shit. Like, they're more wanting to remove the situation. And the ones that are insidious will just leave. Like, they'll undermine them, and it's really bad. That form of fucking leadership exists way too much in our culture, right? Worker building blocks is the other one. Okay, this is the thing that usually ends up making teams and groups really important. Now, again, there's probably terms for this somewhere. Somebody has this in their literature. There's been rooms of people discussing this shit. I don't know any of it. I said, if I run into it, and so be it. This is stuff I've observed, right? As a worker, in any job you work at, building, I guess, alliances, rapport, whatever the fuck you call them, helps. Because it's you and the people there that are going to make the job not suck. And that's the fundamental building block. If you recognize that it's not really management or people above you, and okay, I'm using jobs as a go-to, but even in groups, social groups, right? It's the people above that make it suck. It doesn't matter about them. They'll get really upset when a bunch of you say, hey, there's more of us than you. And we don't want this job to suck. I don't want to come in here every fucking day thinking to myself, God damn it, I don't want to fucking be here. Because this makes a good portion of my life. Whether it's creative, even schools. I don't know. That's my thinking. So what happens is you building that block as a worker or as a member of whatever you want to call it helps make for better leaders. Because the person that ends up in the leadership position above them is definitely competent. Right? And you recognize that. You guys recognize that. This dude's more together. This woman's more together. She has her shit together. Fucking, her skill set is like on par. She's able to forecast a lot of this stuff. It's a thing. See, I look at America, right? American culture. I'm going to say that. United States culture, American culture, right? As an interesting intervention. Like there's America, which is made up of subcultures. Like if you really want to understand United States, people from the United States really well, get into their subcultures, their musics, their sports, their arts, right? Their knitting circles. Because that shit crosses all problems, all like social bigotry to a high degree, right? And it's really how the culture exists. Because if you look at it from another perspective, I'm going to say this. This is a bold fucking statement, but it's a statement that's already been said by several people a lot smarter than me. If you look at America as forged as a business structure, and you ignore culture, American culture, then you constantly going to be perpetually at odds. Like you're going to realize like there's a component to America that is at its nature business of vulture capitalism. And then there's the other part of America that is welcoming and warm and exists because of creative people and people just trying to make a life. Even if they're making their lives, they're creative, right? You can see this. People set up their houses. You get a good measurement of how they are, right? People that set up their lives, their relationships, the people that focus their attention. They work hard and grind all these things in order to support these subcultures or families, right? Which is kind of a subculture. Like family, how a family internally operates is not like how the masses operate. It's not supposed to be, Despite the fact that engineering wants it to be, well, we want the model to look like this. So make your model look like this. And they did this for several years successful. So it's almost like America in general versus America trademarked. Like America TM. The America TM is the business hand. That's always there. It's been there since the initial, Columbus and they made business deals to come over here. Don't get that fucked up. They'll glorify it, mystify it, and act like it's like some amazing world of something. Like, oh, it's he. There was a god that brought him over here. No, dude. Like, listen to what's being said prior to leaving. It's not a romanticized voyage as much as it is a voyage of business. All of them. So they came here with that agenda. And then there's people that naturally are people. And they create a life. Those people make things work. More so than the people that want to control things. Thus explain the reason why for leadership roles, and then why I explain America versus America TM. So I guess I had something in my first episode. I explained all my shit. Not all of it, and that'll take a long fucking time. God damn it, people don't want to hear that. So I'll give it to you in pieces. Okay, so last card. What's the goal and reason for this show? I already said it. The goal and reason for this show is to showcase art and American culture. Right? Actually, art slash American culture is a separate thing. Right? Social concepts and perspectives. Right? So the goal for me is to range from the arts ranging from music to books to film to social perspectives. What changed, what needs to be changed. You know, I come from a sociological background, so I didn't even know what the fuck that was growing up. Didn't even know that existed. That's what kind of city I grew up in, right? Um, and another thing I'm going to analyze cause and effect. So ideas that were put into motion years ago, and I think that's what you're hearing with the Generation X people, right? And don't get it fucked up. There's a generation before Generation X that is the potent structure. Like, they're the ones that kind of set the goal because they had to deal with a lot of shit, especially Kennedy's assassination. Like, the weight of that socially is fucking crazy, right? But they grew up under that umbrella. Okay. I'm going to get into that in a few episodes in. I did lay out the episodes. I was like, literally every fucking barrier I could create for myself. I said, well, if I'm going to do this, I'm going to do this like 24 episodes. You want to know why? Because how I work is like that. I go to the job and I learn the mechanics of the job innately, right? And my goal is to learn it well. To the point is where I don't have to have a boss say, great job there. I don't give a fuck. Okay, what you think. The job has to appease to me, and I have to feel good about what I just did, structurally, right? And the reason why I've worked jobs that, like, you need to move faster, and no matter how well you did, they still gave you shit. Toxic, right? And I've worked jobs that overpraised you, like, kind of give you a false bottom about yourself. And realistically, neither one of those help. You have to kind of measure that, right? So I went into this going, I'll do 24. And you know what? I don't think I'll be able to cover 24. I says, let me just write down ideas, right? Some of these ideas are on notes I have. I have lots of fucking notes. Because I write, like, random shit. I put ideas together. Like, that dude, right? I'm a creative type, so you have to grit and bear it. This is why I like talking about this shit, right? So, again, I think I'm doing well. I don't know how fucking many minutes this thing is. I apologize for it being long. I put a barrier on myself before because I really didn't want to keep doing this. But, all right, so the idea of cause and effect in our culture is interesting. And I think that's what a lot of the Generation X focus on. Like, the fucking hose water and whatever other things. Like, yeah, that's a thing, right? Fucking kids wandering neighborhoods Like, earlier memory I had of myself, I was like 5. And I had to be like 2 miles away from my house without fucking any adult even knowing it. With a bunch of kids, like Lord of the Flies shit, right? That was a thing. That was common then, right? I'm not saying it was right, but it builds character if you survive. I mean, I felt camaraderie. Um, the adult is not the adult. I mean, the range, I think the oldest kid was maybe 10, 11. But that's the thing. And they're talking about that. They're talking about those things in our culture. And the cause and effect, it gave us different grit, right? Like in film and cinema, there is a great movie called Bad News Bears that came out in the late 70s. I want to say this, maybe 76, Walter Matthau, right? Um, that's like the new age of kids. That's like Generation X incarnate, like being just wild, right? Um, because the 70s weren't docile, despite the fact that all the disco ducks want to show you the disco and glamour thing, right? Which is like the glam without the David Bowie piece, right? It's funny, like Mark Bolan piece. There's a lot of shit that happened in that decade. But then when you listen to the classic rock station, you don't really hear all of it. It's kind of strange. So the cause and effect is that we had to figure out shit, right? Now, I'm not getting at millennials because obviously I have a lot of friends and shit like that. That's not a thing. And the one thing I think Gen Xers have to kind of forgive about generations after them is that their social engineering became a thing. And there was decisions made while Generation X existed that end up affecting millennials whether they wanted to admit that or not. They had to do things that their parents said had to be done. I'm going to give you the best example I can think of. Child seats in a car. That's not a millennial going, oh, I need a child seat. No, that's a parent of a millennial saying, oh, well, we got to make sure you have this seat to protect you. And the industry tells me if I don't have this seat, I'm a bad parent, and so on and so forth. Where the generation before that was like, dude, the door's opening. I think I'm going to fall out of this fucking car. Seatbelts? What's those? Right? Back of the truck. That's a thing, right? And they didn't know any better. Like that wasn't a thought process. I mean, it probably came about like a social engineering structure from the corporate hand because there was so many fucking accidents, so many fucking tragedies, right? But the course correction happened with millennials. I'm not even sure if it's course correction. I mean, now it makes sense. But the first time I seen a car seat, I was confused as fuck. I'm thinking this kid is not that small. Like, he needs a booster seat? To what? To sit in the back seat? It didn't make any sense to me. But it was the parents that were trying to sell me on the idea more than the kid, because the kid didn't know anything. Right? And that right there is why you have to give a pass. Because we have more aligned with millennials and Gen Z and probably Alpha. Again, the fact it's called Alpha. The fact we are called Generation X is funny in general because it's a youth-based concept. That X is important. It's you can't drink in a club on the back of your hand. X. Right? Douglas Copeland wrote the novel. Good book. Right? Actually, most of his books are good. But Billy Idol had the first band. But that's what it was. You're not drinking, so there's an X on the back of your hand. Right? I'm going to say something bold, though. There is a small 5-year window before Generation X that really kind of turned the tide. That's a future episode. because I want to do a lot more research because that generation might have been named. I run into them, I talk to them, and I'm amazed like how many notes comparison. They're like, "Well, you weren't even alive yet." I'm like, "No, I wasn't," but I'm aware of that. That's influenced us a lot. Like that. One of the clear things. Okay, so Frank Zappa, Alice Cooper, the band before he became a solo artist, right? The Stooges, the Velvet Underground. There is a group of people that like those that are older than Generation X, the normal structure, right? So they would have been probably like in their late teens when those bands came out, right? It's like a 5 year window because they're I guess by demograph they're boomers, but they're not. And they watched horror in the 60s, like the assassinations of political leaders in the 60s in this country. And um, that's horrifying to watch. That's when the news actually showed a lot of shit. Like, and not, and critical. There was a lot of thought put behind it. And they had to grow up under that umbrella. They go into the umbrella of the rise of of Woodstock Nation. They seen that. So we are Generation X come into the fold of when the suppression of that youth culture, and that's where that began. This is all there. Like I'm not making this shit up. If you read enough about rock history and that period of time, and watch anything around that period of time, you'll hear a lot about this. It's like when you go back to like the Elvis and the Beatles and all these artists that end up becoming like major money making icons at some point in time that were under the rock umbrella, and the preparatory structure to make them pristine and clean, like what we know, the illusion they try to create with pop artists. Because pop, even though pop means popular music, there is a style to pop music, an algorithm to pop music, right, that exists. But rock is kind of uncontrollable to a certain degree. And even though rock became popular for a period of time, it still is, at its innate, a very infectious, rebellious sound, right? So you take these rockers and you clean them up to present them to the country. So when you're hearing them talk about this at various points, like from Elvis to the Beatles and whatnot, it's interesting because it's like a veneer. What this group prior to Generation X went through was the removing of the eroding of that veneer. So they exist. And Gen X realized there's a new veneer coming up. And we had to figure out whether we accept it or not. Actually, Generation X went through two major reconditionings. One in the 70s and one in the late 80s. And depending on where you lived in the late 80s, if it affected you or not. So, that's a thing. So this is what the fucking show's to be like. Me fucking spouting fucking nonsense out of my head. And I'm not sure how I feel about it. I would, like, honestly, I have a poster of Princess Mononoke and poster of the Ice Age, the Ice Storm, not the Ice Age. Ice Age is a cartoon, right? The one with the Sigourney Weaver, Kevin Kline, Joan Allen. Good movie. Both of them good movies. I have that, and that helped me through this. I'm not fucking joking. Like that got me to kind of forget I'm talking into a void, looking at art. How interesting is that? Any which way, episode 2 will be something completely different. I'm hoping that I explained this as best as I possibly could, and you walked away from it, decoding it, going, "Oh, okay, so I know what the show's going to be about."